Hi, welcome back to Let's Talk About It. I'm your host, Alante. And if some of you forgot me from the last episode, let me just remind you of what took place.
Let's talk about it. Talk about it. Talk about it. Talk about it. Can be better. Talk
All
about
right, so now you remember who I am. You remember we were talking about this book that I read that I thought was so important for me to share. And it's called Surthrival Mode by Pervis Taylor III. But I thought it wasn't apt for me to just talk about this on my own. So I have a guest in studio with me today who is going to help me dissect what this book means for men in general and how exactly we can apply this to our lives. So without further ado, just help me welcome my bro, my friend Sergio Hildago to come and share with me. Sergio, what's up?
Let's talk about it.
Going
Talk
on.
about
Yep.
it. Talk about it. Talk
Sergio and
about
I,
it.
we have our friendship that would have developed over a leadership retreat that we went on. And that's where we actually, first discovered this book that we're about to discuss with you. And we've had our time to, read and digest the contents of it. And so now it's only fair that we share that with you in hopes that, this healing journey continues in a wholesome light, on a wholesome level. So let's dive right into it. I'm going to ask you first. Just tell my viewers who you are, what you're passionate about, and then we get into the book.
Absolutely. So, everyone, my name is Sergio Leon Hidalgo. I'm third year student at Brooklyn College, double majoring history and sociology. A lot of what I do is focused around advocacy work for undocumented immigrant students. I guess a little bit about what I've done, co-founder and previous president of the BC Dream Team, a student-led club that is focused around creating a safe space for immigrant students here at Brooklyn College. And I think a lot of my passion also entails just empowering the voices of marginalized people. And I think that an important part of that is also acknowledging mental health and its role within the lives of men of color. So, yeah, I'm really happy to be here and I'm ready to talk about this.
So, I mean, as you see, like I pretty much only hang out with powerhouses. Like, he's been doing so much. So, nobody better to talk about, what it really means to be a man in today's day and age, and how exactly we can focus on our mental health and how important it is for us to be whole as we, go forth and start families, lead businesses, lead industries. And so let's get the ball rolling. So the book Surthrival Mode talks about the way in which men are or should be processing their emotions, and they should be able to feel those emotions. They should be able to learn from them, grow from them. But it mostly speaks about creating a safe space and safe environment for men to express themselves and heal. Moving from a place of just surviving to thriving, hence survival mode. Um, I'm going to ask you first, in the entire book, what is one thing that stands out to you the most? That you read it was like, oh yeah, this is it.
I think his openness, his plain openness, his boldness to really just express a lot of himself. It caught me off guard at first. You don't really see that in a lot of authors and people who want to, create kind of self-help books. Um, you don't see it. You don't see this level of honesty that was present here. It caught me so off guard that I just kept reading more.
I like that. He was open. I mean, it's hard as men to just lay it bare pretty much, and here, uh, Purvis is actually doing that on a grand level. The entire world is getting a lens into who he is and his struggles. I think though for me, it's more of the actionability of
Mm.
this book. Like I was able to read it and right off jump, realize some things that I could implement in my life there and then to figure out what needs to be. and I don't really like the word fix, but what needs to be looked at,
Mm-hmm.
and what I can actually start working on to become a better human being overall. So recently we were having a discussion where we discussed, some of the myths that surround manhood and masculinity, and how we show emotions or don't show emotions, as some people believe. And I think for me, what I took from that in general is that society has a, a crazy understanding of how men deal with things, and oftentimes we're seeing as other than person. Like manhood is often separated from personhood, and I think a large part of us healing and coming into the fullness of what it means to be a healed man means connecting back with that personhood. Understand that we are able to show emotions, even if it's differently from what people might expect. We're still able to show emotions. We're able to um, understand the different layers that there are of emotions. I think, which is quite largely important for me.
I think regarding the discussion around this, it's like so often we do have this distinction between what a human being is and what a man is, because we have this idea that men are supposed to be emotionless. Men are supposed to be completely devoid of certain things that make us human. And I think that in our communities, there's definitely this push to be a provider, to be a protector. But what do these things really look like? Often they scare us to think about, because when we think about what a protector, what a provider really is, it often dehumanizes us and converts us from um, an emotional well-being person to someone who has to be emotionless, someone who has to be rigid, someone who can't falter at any moment. And if they do, they are a failure. They aren't a man. They aren't able to just show themselves and be human, be a person.
I think this is a great point for us to get into what in the book is referred to as the 4 A's of this healing process.
Yeah.
And I know as we talk about regaining personhood, um, the first step to regaining anything, and even if we're dealing with things like Alcoholics Anonymous, so dealing with any sort of ECU addiction, whatever it is acknowledging what those issues are. And so I know that you feel very strongly about that first A, acknowledging. So I'll let you take the jump on it.
I got it. So I think that Pervis makes a really great point of knowing what acknowledgement looks like. Goes straight into it and just tells it as it is. Acknowledgement is the understanding of some kind of trauma, some kind of hurt, knowing that it exists, just knowing it. You don't have to resolve it, fix it, just knowing that it's there, right? I think that's the first step in your healing process, knowing that there's something that isn't correct, that isn't right. Not to say that people are wrong in any way, but there's something there that needs to be acknowledged, that needs to be known to yourself. Next part of acceptance. Acceptance is, I think, with just language in general, Purvis talks about it, that we don't really have a really great definition of things. We don't have a really great way of understanding words, and articulation can be a little bit difficult. And so often we say that acceptance and acknowledgement are one and the same. Well, they're not. Yes, you can acknowledge that something's going on in your life, but then there's the difference between acknowledgement and acceptance. And acceptance, I think that he puts a great example. If anybody has the capability of getting this book, I really do recommend it. He gives an example of his own personal experience. He states that for his acknowledgement, yes, I've been hurt, and I'm sure it has to do with my father's absence. Right? He acknowledges that there's something that is fundamentally painful in his soul, and it has to do with his father's absence. Then, when it comes to acceptance, he puts it as, my father not being in my life has hurt me. I didn't ask for it, but I'm responsible for how my life is to go forward. Essentially, he acknowledges and then he accepts the fact that he has this pain and that he has the responsibility to do something about it, right? And I think that another point is that with acceptance, it's not giving up. It's not saying, well, it just happened and I'm going to just live my life like that. No, he makes it very clear that you are supposed to acknowledge what's going on in your life. And then acceptance is going to be knowing that there's something you can do afterwards. It's knowing that you can try and do more. And I think that the next A's are going to cover a little bit more of what that looks like. So would you like to talk about?
Wait. No, no. Before we go to those other the other two A's, what if I acknowledge that I have no money in the bank and I accept that the bank account's looking a bit thin? Is that like the whole concept of just the acknowledgement? Like, I mean, no money, all right, is what it
No,
is.
no, no.
Is that what it looks like, or is there more to that line of acceptance there that he's speaking about?
Yeah, no. I think let me see. I can give you a really good example that he provides in the book, but let me see. Based off what I hear and what I'm like taking away from it, a lot of it is it goes on to the point of articulation, right? Like it's like right there. It's like I'm trying to explain it in a way that like doesn't skip over it, but I think I think you can help me out here. I think you have it, and I'm like,
So,
okay,
and the reason I'm pushing that is because I think a lot of times, like you rightly said, people when people hear acceptance, they think about giving up.
yeah,
But I think one of the examples you might be looking for is he actually mentions the Serenity Prayer, and I grew up hearing the Serenity Prayer, and I never really understood what it meant until I started facing real issues as a man in terms of God grant me the strength to accept the things I cannot change. The wisdom to know the difference, and the courage to do something about it. I think that's how it goes. Try to remember it exactly, but the whole idea is accepting something doesn't mean that you give into it. It simply means that I am able to see what it is. I am able to say what it is, and now that I know what it is, I have convinced myself, or I have adopted that this is a fact, a fact of reality. You now have to move to a stage where you can actually do something about it. And I think that is what brings us to the third A, which is actually articulation. Men don't really know the words to express what they're feeling. Oftentimes, we're kind of forced to operate on certain emotional levels. We're either angry, or we're sad, or we're in love, or we're happy. But between those emotions, and those are like the primary emotions that everybody thinks that's what we're feeling. So many times, it's difficult for men to put into words the things that they're actually feeling. Society teaches us to be protectors, to be providers, and very seldomly do they expect us to, practice self care in the light of understanding what we're feeling and being able to say that. So we operate on anger, we operate on love, happiness, sadness, and pretty much we live in those four emotions. But between those, there's a whole lot. There is feeling disappointed. There is feeling sorrow,
feeling grief,
and, and all of these go to different extents. Because I think Purvis talks about it when he spoke about what he felt about his father. It wasn't like lingering on any of these main emotions. So for him to be able to say to somebody, "Oh, I feel whatever," the word isn't there because it's not what we're taught. It's not how we're taught to express ourselves. And so it's very hard to articulate what we're feeling, and that's why I feel a lot of times people think either we're not feeling something at all. And it brings me to another point in Purvis's book as well, where he speaks about the fact that men, we basically cry or we express our emotions at wavelengths that only men can hear. And I think about that because it's like if you go into a bar or you go to a game.
as a man, you understand what those experiences look like. And so when you see it in another, you're able to recognize those patterns and you're able to say, something's not right here. When other people around may be like, just an off day, or he just acts like that. But you understand that maybe through your own experiences that as a man, something's not right there. We are more than just happy, sad. We, maybe going through really tough emotions that are very hard to understand. Sorrow and grief, I think one of the first things that come to my mind because those are things that at any point in life can happen. It can be through a traumatic event, it can be through past trauma, but it can also just come out in different ways. We will express them through anger, and I think that Pervis speaks about how I think men are comfortable showing two emotions for the most part, which is anger and indifference. And those are underlying feelings that come from other feelings that it's really intense to think about. But as a man, you realize, yeah, I think that that's something like the comfortability behind showing emotions is very clear in many of our lives, and we're just never taught about. We're never taught how to articulate. Besides that, we're never taught how to go beyond those simple baseline emotions that we really think about.
And the other part, the other A is, I think, kind of unfair to men, but again, this is why this book is so impactful because it actually says it out loud. And the reason I think it's unfair is because so we've acknowledged a problem. Let's say for some reason we're vibrating at such a high level that we've acknowledged a problem or what the emotion. We have accepted that we feel how we feel, and we are able to articulate it. So we've mastered three of these steps. Now the onus is again put on us to practice alchemy, which basically means taking what we have and making it into something else. So taking that pain, taking that hurt, taking um that indifference, taking whatever it is and turning that into something else. And the reason I think this is unfair is because when we look at the way in which society treats women, and don't get me wrong, women have their own set of issues to deal with in terms of inequalities and all of that. But for this podcast, we're focusing on men. Um, but when you think about it, the onus is on us to fix it, and often with no resources, because as we just spoke about, people often think we don't have issues, we don't have any problems. So the resources aren't there to actually guide us through this process of turning lead into gold.
It also has to do a lot with the support systems that people have. I think that support systems are important, but even in men's lives, I can speak from personal experience that there isn't a lot of great examples of what it looks like to be a good, well balanced, emotionally well man, right? And there isn't in my own personal life, there isn't a lot of support systems that will acknowledge or be able to identify key, points of whether I'm feeling depressed, whether I'm feeling sorrow. It's just not there, right? I think in so many of our lives, there just aren't people that are present that can often identify these things and assist us through it. And so we fall through the cracks and we fall more deep into what these emotions can lead to.
I think, and that's why it was so important for me, like even on campus and now in my circle in general, finding and building a support system of men who I can call mentors, who I can call coaches that are there to show you, like, hey, we aren't perfect in ourselves, but this is what we're striving towards. Um, and sometimes it looks pretty ugly. Like, we've had situations where we're in a room and we're discussing, and we break into tears, or people break into tears, and that would not happen in a different setting. But creating that safe space where you are able to process those emotions, I think it has been instrumental to both of us actually growing to a place where we're now able to talk freely to you about it. And if we're to like pull it together, in terms of like, so we have the four A's, we have the acknowledgement, we have the acceptance, we have the articulation, and now we're master alchemists because we're able to create networks, create groups where we're able to deal with the issues that we have and turn, situations that could end very horribly, turn it into something that we can actually build from, or we could plant seeds from. What do you think is necessary for men in this day and age, in this society, to foster or grow, have wholesome lives?
I think that a lot of what I built upon is community, and like we've said it time and time again, right? We've created these support systems, but what do we do afterwards? And it's a really difficult question because it's like you're saying, it's really unfair that now we have to take all these things and create actionable items within ourselves and acknowledge that we can do something, but it's often feeling like, can I really? What do I do now? Like where? How do I get better? How do I do better? How do I be better? Um, and yeah, I think that in my own life, it's kind of difficult to say, right? Like, how do I become a better man? Is it acknowledging my privilege? Is it reaching out and assisting other men who are still in a difficult place? or is it just focusing on my own well-being and ensuring that I can, overcome whatever trauma and whatever, difficulties that still exist in my life? And I think there's just so much that goes like into it that it's like different facets, really. Like,
I think I think one of the things that we've kind of not glided over, but one of the underlying factors of this is defining what it actually means to be a man. And I think with today's society of all these definitions and being politically correct, with toxic masculinity, and with all of these definitions and terms and all these things floating about, it is very difficult for us to say, well, this is what it means. And like my bro just stated, a lot of times we don't have that role model to look up to say, oh, this is what it looks like to be a healthy man. Because a lot of times you got a lot of boys in men's bodies. This is just a fact. Um, so I think defining for ourselves and at the same time sharing that definition with people that are around us of what it really means to be a wholesome man, not just somebody who wears the pants, because it's 2025. I think it's important in us to figure out how exactly we move past the stage of just the support groups. And so I think if it's one thing that we can take from this is one, you know and this is kind of veering to something else where people often say, "Oh, this triggers me and that triggers me." It's a whole lot of episode that I want to do on that term trigger. But I feel like what we need to get away from is allowing society to dictate how we show up and when we show up, and being able to find role models that we're able to, in some cases, emulate. In some cases, say, "Hey, I like this, but I don't like that." And understand that there isn't a measuring scale that we have to measure ourselves against to say that this is how we should look, but at the same time we have to hold ourselves to a standard that the people coming after us can actually look up, and we can be this new role model that they weren't able to see, or we didn't have. And that's why I think this book was so important, because there are things that you can put into action right away. I don't know. I feel like everybody should go ahead and get a copy. And even if you can't get a copy, you have channels like these. You have other wholesome channels that you can connect with. You can connect with groups, whether it's on a college campus, groups off the campus, um, especially if you're in a city where you have a lot of men of color, or you have men in general who are doing things for their community. These are groups that you can probably try to get into, become a part of, so that you can start playing your part in ensuring that the men around you are being able to breathe. You know, in closing, what do you want to say to my wonderful audience?
I think that it's important for everybody to acknowledge their mental health, keep it pushing. I think that as men, we often don't focus enough on it. We always hear these conversations about, men are supposed to be more emotional, men are supposed to acknowledge their emotions more, and it's difficult for us in many ways. And I think that in some way or shape or another, we have to give grace to a lot of the men in our lives and understand that we're not coming from a place of full, emotional intelligence. It's a building process, and I think that regardless of that, we should still, do our best to uplift the men in our lives, educate them on what we can. And this book is definitely something that for anybody, if there's a man in your life that you want to assist and you want to help and you want to see be better, get this book. This book, I it's definitely changed. It's definitely life changing for many men. And listen, if people don't like to read, like this thing. It's short. It's something. It's concise. It's effective, and I think that people would take a lot from this.
Definitely. I mean, not much more for me to say. I feel like this episode is one. It's a bit heavy, but at the same time, I think it's important for us to discuss this, especially from jump, so we understand that one, we're not perfect, but at the same time, we are putting in the work. And as long as you keep putting that work in, like I say, in my podcast, together we can achieve way more than if we were trying to go this alone. And this is why this is a healing journey. And so I'm happy that my brother was able to come and be on this journey with me and with you as well. And as you go about your week, as I always say, let love be a guide, peace be a map, and kindness your companion. From Sergio and Alante. Have a good one.
This ain't what I deserve.